I've always thought of Walter as sort of the Van Gogh of the studio glass movement, this sort of unsung. He was always pushing the limits of what glass could do and the way it communicated with people.
He's so smart. He likes the science of it. He likes the history of it.
The things I take inspiration from Walt is just his excitement for the material.
He's so passionate about the material and so passionate about making sure people learn and grow in their knowledge of glass.
He is very well versed in the history of different aspects of glassmaking and can speak with authority.
Walt's the man. He's the one that has that perspective.
I think that Walt is so beloved.
Walter's contribution is massive. It's been a pleasure, and of course he's been working here for a very long time, many years, as our main MC in the Hot Shop. Walter Lieberman is a gifted artist and illustrator whose talents have taken on a new dimension during his time at the Museum of Glass. It was here that he began creating technical illustrations of glassblowing techniques drawn directly onto the hot shop floor. Well, drawing on the hot shop floor is a tradition within the glass movement, but Walter really takes it to the next level.
A picture says 1,000 words, so a chalk drawing helps convey or what the artist's vision is.
He's trying to look for tools to help explain what's being made to the audience. So he can sit there and explain with his hands all day about, okay, now you're going to take this bubble and stick it to this bubble, but the natural thing for Walt to do is to draw it out.
His drawings bring a visual to that. I think they deepen the level of education and learning that can happen in our hot shop.
They actually are better than photographs because you can see, the important parts.
He would, shade it to make sure that it really kind of came to life, and it was nearly, three-dimensional on the hot shop floor, and he was drawing on such a large scale too.
They're like scientific or botanical illustrations, and they're also extremely beautiful. So you're not looking at background, you're not looking at reflections. Well, you see some reflections, but they're drawn.
Walter Lieberman grew up on the outskirts of New York City, a place teeming with energy, culture, and constant stimulation. Even as a child, he turned to art as a form of escape and expression.
Walt was always directed towards art. He was always drawing. He had a crayon in his hand and later on a pencil or paintbrush. And so he's always been an artistic person, and he's always been sketching, and he's always been very visually oriented, I would say.
I started out copying comic books. Mad magazine was a big influence on my artistic career. When you're young, you want to do stuff just like the professionals do. So, my standard of excellence was how much it looked like the actual magazine. Both my mom and dad were hobby painters. My dad was a lawyer, my mother was a school teacher. I wanted to be a computer scientist, just like my brother. I had, drawn and painted and done all that art stuff as a kid, but I didn't really think of it as a career. As I got older, I decided if I'm ever going to do it, I've got to do it when I'm young. So now's the time. So I quit Carnegie Mellon and I went to live with my brother in Boston.
I said, well, why don't you come up and here in Boston, we have the Massachusetts College of Art.
Well, he was doing a series of pieces called the erosion series of glass, where he was sandblasting into the glass, and he was doing something unlike anybody else that I knew of at the time.
He was blowing glass bowls and sandblast images into them, or sheets of glass that were salvaged off of old buildings in Seattle and sandblast images into them. He was not so much a painter as he was working with sandblast glass.
I was studying glass at Mass Art, and it was mostly glass blowing. And I was sort of gaining the basic skills, but I was kind of bored with the results. So I made a vase and I made a bowl, and I wasn't all that excited about it. So I started to work with a sandblaster and carve the glass, and I would carve it till it was almost cut in half, and there was just one little piece that held the two halves together, and to sort of create the tension, the glass being beautiful and fragile. I got a lot of good feedback on that. In fact, I got into this international show called Glass Now of 1979, and it went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Victoria and Albert in London, the Louvre in Paris. Oh, I was all over the place, just like everybody else who learns to blow glass. You know, you think you've invented stuff, and then you open up a book and you find out that somebody copied you 100 years before you were born. In college, my teacher, Dan Daly, he was a terrific role model. He wasn't a great teacher, but he was a terrific role model because he took his work so seriously. And I think that's what led me to believe that you could actually be a serious artist and do that for a living.
In his early years, Lieberman's artwork was deeply rooted in political and social themes. This commitment to authenticity and social engagement has remained a defining element of his work throughout his career.
He was always pushing the limits of what glass could do and the way it communicated with people.
He had social concerns. He's actually an extremely honorable person, unbelievably honorable to the point of maybe painfully honorable. And he would have stuff about the homeless, early before it was trendy to be worried about the homeless, so with a bottle in a doorway and a man. And these are the sort of things that back when the day in the 80s when people were trying to do a beautiful goblet.
Went on civil rights marches, burned my draft card. That was where I started out, looking at political and social issues.
He was bringing really powerful content to his paintings.
There was a famous Japanese tour that came through here in the early years where they did installations and they were lowering some Japanese artists off of a building on thick ropes and lowering them down to the ground slowly, and the Japanese were curled up in like fetal position, and one of the ropes broke, and the Japanese man didn't say a word and plunged down to the ground and obviously died.
And that was the first time I had ever seen anybody die. And it shook me. And I didn't, so I didn't know how to deal with it, so I sort of decided maybe I would deal with it through my art. So I made this piece called He Fell Silently. As we watched, he fell silently. It was well received. I felt a little guilty, sort of, am I exploiting this tragedy or whatever? It helped me deal with the emotions of seeing this thing, this trauma. And so I sold the piece through my gallery, Traver, and we sent the money to the family of the dancer.
A pivotal moment in Lieberman's artistic evolution came when he met renowned glass painter Albinus Elskes. Elskes' influence helped shape Walter's emerging identity as a glass painter, marking a turning point that would deeply inform his work from that moment on.
Well, Pilchuck played a big role in all these artists that came to Seattle. It was a place to gather and share their ideas. they could spend time in the summer there and work together. And
I'd heard so much about Pilchuck, I thought everybody's going to be better than me, and they're going to sit around and watch me work and laugh. And I was like so nervous. Once I got there, and Pilchuck is a magic place. It was no time in my life when I had absolutely nothing to do except make art.
He had taken a class from a European glass painting specialist by the name of Albinus Elskus, who was known around the world for his painting techniques, and really opened up Walter to painting on glass.
I got selected for Albinus Elskus's teaching assistant. They pick the teaching assistants by your slides. They don't pay much attention to do you have the skills. And I walked on the Pilchuck campus, and somebody I knew came up to me and said, "Walt, have you seen Albinus?" I said, "No." He said, "Oh, he's really mad." Finally, I caught up with him, and he says to me, "I need a teaching assistant. I don't need another student." And I said to him, "Look, Albinus, we're stuck with each other for the next 3 weeks. I'll do everything I can to help you out, and this is it now, so we got to make the best of it." I said, "Yes, Mr. Elskus," and "No, Mr. Elskus, of course, Mr. Elskus. Can I wash your brushes, Mr. Elskus?" And we started to get along, and we became good friends, and he got me really excited about painting on glass.
Walter Lieberman is an artist who thrives in collaboration. Working with trusted peers allowed him to explore new aesthetic directions and experiment with approaches that differed from his solo work.
Early arrivals on the glass scene here, Dick was the first person I met in Seattle. Charlie had come to go to Pilchuck, and Dick was a local doing stained glass. I was doing stained glass. I had been painting on stained glass in Olympia.
Just as I was about to poop out, I think, on doing stained glass, I ran into all these wackos, and we just nestled together.
And Walt started something called Painters Club. And we were all card-carrying members of it. In his garage studio, we would do these painting parties where we would invite friends who were painters to come work with enamels and decorate beer glasses. The three-way collaboration that Dick and Walter and I did was, we did an exquisite corpse. Exquisite corpse is this artist game where you take a piece of paper and fold it, and so you can't see, the person starts the drawing at the bottom or the top, and you fold it, and you only see the lines where the drawing, ends. His are the nicer ones. Yeah. Okay. Here's a couple of Walt's. This one. There are several of Walt's here. He did the bottom two. Yeah, Walt did the top and the bottom of this one. Yeah, so you can see he's a really good drawer. Anyway, that's probably enough of that. Walt and Dick collaborated for a number of years.
When Dick and I first met, we really didn't get along. Sort of total opposite. It was kind of a situation where we didn't understand each other's sense of humor.
I was working on compositions, and Walt was helping all the students. I was one of the students, and I'd given up on this one portrait that I'd done. I said, "This is stupid. I give up after 2 firings." And
I said, "Well, I can finish it for you." He said, "Well, yeah?" I said, "Yeah, I can finish it for you, no problem."
He had touched up the eyes, maybe did something with the ear, and the composition was better. It was like, I was shocked. It was like, Walt. He spoke my language. I spoke a totally different language than he did, and he was fluent in my language, and he helped me with my language. It was like, wow, that's great, Walt. And I said, Walt, I love your work. And Walt said, well, I love your work. We just started working together.
He's not me. I'm much more restrained than Dick is. He's much more wild than I am. It's a completely different perspective on art and life, and so I learned from that. I enjoy it, and he's just a great guy. I mean, we've stayed friends now for 40 years or something like that.
Walter Lieberman's first-hand experience and deep ties to the studio glass movement have made him a valuable resource for the Museum of Glass. In many ways, Lieberman serves as an ambassador for the generation of glass artists who shaped the movement's early years, sharing their legacy with today's audiences and helping to preserve it for future ones. The Museum of Glass has been extraordinarily lucky to have Walt as a staff member for quite some years now.
Walt has a great reverence for glass, and not just contemporary glass, but really the history of glass. He scours museum collections that are online. Dude geeks out on it.
Really, he is our resident historian.
More recently, he's been working on looking at past residency images and helping us remember and capture all the people and the artists that were involved in each of the residencies. We call it Fridays with Walt. It's one of our favorite moments because we do get this wonderful knowledge, but also these special stories. Walt's notes will live in our database in perpetuity.
I do reach out to Walt when I have questions in glass, and he's very knowledgeable in the history. Sometimes when I see him here, we'll talk about things, or sometimes I'll shoot him emails or even messages through Instagram.
His research will inform how things are archived, how things are sorted, and how the content becomes available eventually to the wider public. You can see in the body of work that he is constantly exploring, constantly asking questions. And I think Walter's legacy not only is that body of work and of course his drawings, but also that ongoing investigation, curiosity.
His legacy is his contribution to spreading the knowledge that people have.
His attitude about glass and his attitude about how one should approach the material in such a pure, honest way.
It's going to be younger people like myself that can take that information and pass it on to the next generation. So.
I'm a nerd, a glass nerd, history nerd. I love to draw. I'm infatuated with glass. It's a obsession.